Hey everyone, welcome to today's Bookmas video. Today I will be sharing with you all my least favorite books of the year. So I have 14 books on this list. I'm pretty happy with that because this year was actually pretty great in terms of quality. I didn't read all that many books that I didn't like, and only a couple of them are books that I actually hated. The majority of the books on this list, they just weren't really for me, but I didn't hate them, so that's a good thing. And I will be going through the list in order of least hated to my least favorite. I also want to apologize if any of these books are favorites of yours. I definitely have books that I love that other people don't love, and as much as it hurts my heart, I know that everyone has different tastes, and that's completely okay. I love books like Little Women and Anne of Green Gables, and I have people that I know personally who did not like those books. And that's okay. That's completely fine. I think it's very, very fun to see how everyone's tastes differ, and the different aspects of a book that make it a great book for someone could make it a terrible book for someone else. So none of this is objective. This is all just my personal feelings, my emotional reactions, or lack thereof. So if you disagree with any of these books, you can let me know in the comments. That's completely okay. I will not be offended, but I just wanted to apologize if I offend you. But let's just go ahead and get started. So this first book, I did not dislike it. I thought it was good and I did enjoy my time reading it, but there were just aspects of it that made me very, very disappointed. And I had such high expectations going into this book. I actually thought it would be a 5-star read, and it just wasn't. It was 3 stars for me, so that's why it's on this list at number 14, and that is The Book of Lost Names by Kristen Harmel. So this book has to do with the forging of identity documents during World War II, so trying to escape the Nazis, and this was in France, and the main characters were helping people escape into Switzerland. And there were a lot of edge of my seat moments, a lot of moments with very high stakes, and it was well written, but I personally found the book to be very, very predictable. I could predict so many of the plot points that happened and how the book ended. There was also a very, very annoying love triangle in this book that just didn't work for me. Did not like it. It just didn't feel unique, and it felt like just another World War II story. So many of them are very similar, unfortunately, and I was just hoping for something a little bit more original, so I feel bad saying that. I'm sorry if this is a book that you love, but it just didn't work for me. Next up is a book that I also thought would be at least 4 stars. I was expecting to love it because it's a retelling of my favorite Christmas story, and that is Midnight in Everwood by, I forget the author's name, but it's on the book cover. So this book, it's a retelling of the Nutcracker. I had such high hopes for it, and it started off on a high, definitely. It is set in the Edwardian period in England, and it then is set in this winter wonderland. So it's kind of between the two worlds. And the first few chapters were very interesting. We have our main character, Marietta, who is a ballerina, and she is in the upper class, so her parents don't really support her. And a lot of this book has to do with women's rights and feminism, and it just got very, very preachy, and just, it's like it was being shoved down my throat, which I really, really did not appreciate. The main character was also very oddly characterized. She didn't make sense as a character because she started off as this strong woman who knew her mind and really wanted to live her life the way she wants to live it. And she just had this personality of no nonsense type of person. But then as soon as she ends up in Everwood, which is this magical world, it's like a flip switches and she becomes extremely whiny, extremely immature, and just none of it really made sense to me. Another thing, and I love very descriptive writing. Sometimes. I don't always love it, but I generally do. I generally like things to be very, very beautifully described. And in November, I read The Enchanted Sonata, which is a Nutcracker retelling, and it was very descriptive, very beautifully written, and I just felt like I was there. And while this book, Midnight in Everwood, did transport me to Everwood, it just got to a point where I would roll my eyes at how crazy the descriptions were. It was just over the top. As many similes as possible, as many metaphors as possible, as many descriptions of the candy covering the buildings as possible. It just got to a point where I couldn't picture anything anymore. It was just way too much. The majority of the book is set in Everwood, and the pacing of the plot was also very, very poorly done. It was very, very slow moving. It didn't make sense. And there were actually some plot holes that were just never discussed. Like, it just didn't make sense to me. So yeah, those are my thoughts, and I'm really, really sorry if this is a book you loved, but it didn't do it for me. Next up is a book that I buddy read with Katie from Paperbacks and Ponytails, and she really loved this book, but unfortunately I did not, and that is The Phantom of the Opera by Gaston Leroux. I couldn't have cared less for the characters or the story. No. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, Katie. I did give this 2 stars. It wasn't terrible. The writing was actually very good, but the story, I just did not like it. And honestly, it could have also been my mood, because being a mood reader, sometimes I find myself not enjoying a book that I normally would, and then I'll stop and then I'll read it at the right time and then I love it. So maybe if I had read it at a different time, I would like it more. I think I just found the main character, Christine, to be very, very annoying, and the whole mystery, if it's a mystery with the phantom, the ghost, whatever, just kind of rolled my eyes. But I might reread it in the future. I'm not getting rid of the book. Maybe I'll read it when I'm in the mood for something of this nature, but I just didn't really enjoy it at the time that I read it. I have some Agatha Christie's on this list, which is pretty sad. The first one is Poirot Investigates, and this is a very short collection of short stories with Hercule Poirot, and it just did not work for me. I definitely prefer her full-length novels. I have not enjoyed her short stories, the ones that I've read so far, with the exception of a few of the Miss Marple ones. But I just find with mysteries, I don't like short stories all that much. It needs to be either very funny or over the top, but it's purposefully over the top, or very, very creepy. Otherwise, I'm so bored, and I don't find the resolution to be satisfying because I didn't get to know the characters, and I just didn't really enjoy it. So unfortunately, this was not a favorite. Another Agatha Christie I didn't like is The Secret of Chimneys, and this is a me problem. I did not like this because it has to do with international politics and international conspiracies and blackmail. Not really my thing. Just my own personal reading taste. It's not something I enjoy, so unfortunately this was just not one that I liked. Next up is One by One by Ruth Ware, and this is one that I found to be okay. While I was reading it, I enjoyed the atmosphere. I enjoyed that it's an isolated, closed circle kind of mystery set in I think it was the French Alps, if I'm not mistaken. But it was in the mountains and in a chalet. And this work group basically were on this trip, and they kind of start dying. And I knew almost right away who the perpetrator was. I personally thought it was very obvious, and so the resolution was not satisfying for me. It wasn't a terrible book. Like, I thought it was okay. It just didn't wow me. And this is another reason why I don't read thrillers all that much, is because I usually end up feeling like they were mediocre. And I also didn't like how much language Ruth Ware has in her books. It's just a personal thing with me. It was also way too long, in my opinion. Like, it just wouldn't end. It just kept going and it kept going. And the resolution, like, it could have been resolved in half the length, half the amount of time. So if you're looking for something atmospheric, it's not a terrible book. It definitely delivers. It's just the mystery itself was kind of meh. This next book I feel so bad about, but I did not like it. And the main reason is pretty sad, and it's just because it was boring. And that is Silas Marner by George Eliot. It was just boring. There's usually always something in a book that keeps my interest, but absolutely nothing in this book kept me gripped or made me want to keep reading. I was bored almost to tears, so did not enjoy this. I'm hoping that George Eliot's other books are more enjoyable, because this just wasn't. Next is The Last Thing He Told Me by Laura Dave, and I'm really sad about this one as well. It's another thriller, and it didn't work for me. I thought the pacing was off and the ending was a little weird. I did not enjoy my time with this book. This woman, Hannah, her husband disappears after this scandal that has to do with his job, and so he flees and leaves a note behind for his daughter, and Hannah and her adopted daughter, she's not her biological daughter, they're trying to figure out what on earth happened to Owen and what's going on with his work as well. And the majority of this book is just about uncovering secrets about Owen's past, and it just wasn't interesting. It wasn't all that unique, and it would have been fun, I think, to get Owen's perspective as well, as he was, in hiding or whatever, but it wasn't great. Next is The Paris Library by Janet Skeslien Charles, and this is another historical fiction that really disappointed me. This book just left me wanting so much more. It really didn't make sense to me. I didn't understand the point of the story. It's dual timeline, and I didn't even enjoy either of the timelines. The characters weren't interesting. The writing was okay. It wasn't great. It wasn't a great book. Kind of similar feelings that I had towards the Book of Lost Names. It just wasn't that special. And I feel really bad saying that, so Sorry. All right, so now getting to the 5 books that I really, really didn't like. Like, these books are the ones I feel the most passionate about for various reasons. And the first one is Elephants Can Remember by Agatha Christie. This book was terrible. It was just awful. It was terribly written. It's Hercule Poirot, but he did not feel like Hercule Poirot at all. And I'm pretty sure Agatha Christie was struggling with her health at the time that she wrote this, so that probably has to do with it. And I mean no disrespect to her as an author. It was not good. It was not good at all. This next book is by Leo Tolstoy, and I could have had The Death of Ivan Ilyich on this list, but I had DNF'd that book, so it didn't make this list. But that short story, The Death of Ivan Ilyich, I did not enjoy. But this book by Leo Tolstoy, I really, really did not like, and that is the Sebastopol Sketches. I could care less about his time going through the army in the Sebastopol region during the Crimean War. Could care less. I just got so bogged down by the war-heavy sections of this book. And similar to War and Peace, in the sense that War and Peace had sections of just like essays on the military, politics, etc. But even though those sections were there, War and Peace had a lot more plot to it. It actually had characters that I came to really care for, and there was just more to it. So if War and Peace had all of those sections taken out and it was just the military sections, I would have hated it as well. But the Sebastopol Sketches, I just did not care about anyone. I didn't care about the characters. I didn't care about the Crimean War, any of it. I was just so bored and bogged down by the writing and just not a fan. And unfortunately, besides War and Peace and Anna Karenina, everything else I've tried by Tolstoy I just did not have success with, including Resurrection. I didn't like. The Death of Ivan Ilyich I didn't like. I tried some other short stories in the collection that I had with The Death of Ivan Ilyich. Sebastopol Sketches, I just don't think Tolstoy is for me, but I do love Anna Karenina and War and Peace, so those books are exceptions. Next is To a God Unknown by John Steinbeck, and yikes. That book left me so confused. It was just odd. Like, I didn't understand what John Steinbeck's point was with it. It felt very much, at times, like he was arguing why we should turn to religion for various reasons, but then at other times it was like, don't turn to religion. I just didn't understand. Maybe it's because I'm not great at analyzing books. I'm not an English major. I'm not a literature major or anything like that. I just read for fun, and this book wasn't fun. And it just left me questioning, like, what on earth was his point? What was the point? The entire book is symbolic of parts of Genesis that have to do with like Joseph and his relationship with his father and brothers. And that was interesting, but the symbolism was a little odd too, and it just didn't work for me. If you are a very intelligent person and have read this book and can pick it to pieces and explain why it's a masterpiece, that's amazing. I can't, and maybe I could if I tried, but I don't want to try because I was bored. And yeah, I didn't like it. I really liked East of Eden by John Steinbeck, but that book I felt was a lot more straightforward. And maybe it's because To a God Unknown is more nuanced, but I think sometimes I struggle with nuance. Like, I like to have a clear picture of what the purpose is, what the morale is, whatever. So I probably sound very dumb. I'm sorry. I did not like this book. 2 more books. Oh my gosh. Okay, this next one, it drove me insane. The Turn of the Screw and Other Stories. None of the stories in this collection worked for me. The Turn of the Screw, I hated. I hated it. I hated all the stories in this collection. Just every single character in The Turn of the Screw in particular made me super uncomfortable, and not in a way that was like fun to experience, because sometimes when I read creepier books or more unsettling stories, it's kind of fun, but it's just, this was different. This had a different ambience to it and a different feeling, and it didn't sit well with me. The children in the story were just weird. The governess was weird. Everything about the story was weird. And then every other story in this collection that I read, I did not like. It just is not for me. Maybe Henry James isn't for me. Maybe it's his writing, but I didn't like it at all. All right, and this last book, I know some people are going to be very surprised because it's within a series, and the first 2 books in the series are 5-star books for me. I adored them, but this last book really drove me insane. And it's for one particular reason, but it kind of ruined the entire book for me. And that is As Good as Dead by Holly Jackson. A Good Girl's Guide to Murder and Good Girl, Bad Blood. The first 2 books, 5 stars. The mysteries were great, the characters were great, everything was great. This book, on the other hand, I can't say too much because it is the 3rd book in the series, and the main character, Pip, she is in a state. She is in this state because of events from the first 2 books. So I can't really talk about that. But I don't appreciate what the author did with her character in this book. And the mystery was solved basically halfway through the book. But the main reason I hated this, and it actually made me very, very angry, was something that Pip does in the book. And again, I can't say it without spoiling. But she does something, and some people who read this book are on the side of, I understand, and I understand why she did what she did. I get it, and I can sympathize with her. I can sympathize to an extent, but it was just taken so far, and the way that I feel the author really excused Pip's actions just did not sit well with me. It made me very angry. Maybe it's just my worldview and what I believe to be just, because everyone is different, but I was very, very angry. So sorry. That book just was not great for me. But the first 2 books in that series are great. So I'm trying to figure out a way to end on a positive note with this video, but I think this video is coming out before my favorites list. So hopefully you'll see this video first. We'll get all the negativity out of the way, and then you can watch my favorites video, which will come out the day after. So that is it for this video. I am so sorry if I offended anyone. I mean no offense. These are just my personal opinions and feelings, and like I said, they're very personal to me, and everyone's different in their reading tastes. So these books just didn't work for me. But that's it for this video. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video, which I hope will be a little more positive. Bye.